A Postman Pat storybook collection, read aloud for kids. If you enjoy my videos, please consider subscribing, and why not share my videos with friends or family members? Postman Pat gets a pet. There was a time long ago when Pat had no cat. He was alone in his red van, and he had no Jess to talk to as he drove along. But the story really begins with 3 white mice. One day they all went shopping when Julian saw something that made his eyes shine. Look! It was a cage full of mice. One of the mice was looking out at Julian and twitching its whiskers. "Ooh," said Pat. "I'm not sure if I like mice." "I always wanted one when I was little," said Sarah, "but my mum would never let me." "I'd love a mouse," said Julian. "You'd need 2 or 3 to keep each other company," said Sarah. "Well, we could go in and have a look at them." So they did. "Aren't they lovely?" said Julian. Said Pat. "I'm not too sure." Ouch! A little grey mouse had given his finger a good nip. "You frightened it," said Sarah. "That's why it bit you. They have to get used to you." "I don't think I could," said Pat. "Can we?" said Julian. "Well, they are lovely," said Sarah. "Yes, all right then." And she bought all 4 mice and the cage to keep them in. "What should we call them?" said Julian. "You can call that one Nipper," said Pat. "And the white ones are Bess and Bill," said Julian. "And the black and white ones, Jess," said Sarah. It was soon time to catch the bus home to Greendale. It was almost full. The Reverend Timms jumped in just as the bus was getting ready to start. "Hello," he said. "What have you got there?" "Mice? Bless me! I had some when I was a boy. What a lovely present." Julian put the cage of mice on the seat beside him. He looked out of the window to wave at Peter Fogg on his tractor. When he looked back at the mice, there was Nipper sitting on top of the cage, looking all about with great interest. He had never seen a bus before and meant to find out all about it. Nipper jumped off the cage, ran along the seat, up the back, and jumped into Dorothy Thompson's lap. She screamed, "A mouse! A mouse! Help!" She jumped up, shaking Nipper off her coat onto the floor. Now it ran between Reverend's legs. It was away along the length of the bus, making people jump and squeal as it tickled their feet. The driver stopped the bus and joined in the hunt for the mouse. Everyone tried to catch the little mouse, and whilst they were busy, the other 3 squeezed out between the bars of the cage and ran for freedom. What a rumption there was! It was Reverend Timms who put things right in the end. He said in his best church voice, "Dear friends, if you will all sit still and quiet, I'll catch those mice in a trice. I kept mice as a boy, and I know what to do." At the sound of his voice, everyone calmed down and sat quietly. The Reverend borrowed a plastic bucket from Granny Dryden and some crumbs of cake from Miss Hubbard. He put the cake into the bucket and the bucket on the floor sideways and waited. Everyone sat very still. You would have thought there was no one in that bus. It was that quiet. But you could hear the scurrying and scratching as the 4 mice explored the bus, and then patter-patter sound. They had found the bucket, and their little paws tapped on the smooth plastic. Then a tiny munching sound as they ate the cake. The Reverend picked up the bucket quickly. There was 4 little mice in the bottom, and no matter what they did, they could not get out again. The plastic was too slippery for them to climb. The mice had to live in a bucket for a day or 2 until Pat could think of what to do. When Mrs. Goggins heard about the trouble with the mice, she said, "If you get a bigger pet, it won't squeeze between the bars. Why don't you get a hamster? They are lovely. So Pat went to Pencaster on Tuesday afternoon and changed the mice for a lovely golden hamster. One day, Julian said, "Do you think we could let it out for a run around the carpet?" Sarah said, "Well, I'm sure it wouldn't do any harm to let it out for a little while, if you keep an eye on it. It's too big to go down a mouse hole." But the hamster went behind the settee and wouldn't come out. When they looked behind the settee, the hamster had gone. Then Pat came home and said, "What's this hole?" Sarah said, "What hole?" "Oh." When Ted called in, they showed him the hole. "That's a hamster hole, all right," he said. "Perhaps our Towser could get it out." He brought his little dog. It sniffed at the hole and wagged his tail like mad, but it couldn't get the hamster out. But Pat had an idea. "I'll catch that hamster," he said. "You'll never get it in a bucket," said Ted. "No, but I bet you I can get it," said Pat. That night, Pat got an old baby bath out and put it near the hole the hamster had made. He put some hamster food into the empty bath. Then he found a long piece of wood and leaned it against the side. The wood made a path up to the edge of the bath. "Are you thinking of giving that hamster a bath?" said Sarah. "It might need one," said Pat, "but it must be getting hungry. When we've gone to bed, it's sure to come out. The idea is that it will walk up the wood, jump into the bath for the food, and not be able to climb out again up the slippery sides." "It'll never work," said Sarah. "Hamsters have more brains than mice." When all the house was quiet, there was a tiny sound of little paws and nibbling teeth. Pat crept downstairs with his torch. There, in the empty bath, sat a dusty hamster, blinking in the light. On Wednesday afternoon, Pat took the hamster back to Pencaster in its cage, and came back with a large sheepdog. Julian called the dog Bess, after one of the mice. He loved her. She was a very lovely dog, and had to go for long walks every day. When Pat was out with his letters, and Julian was at school, Sarah and Bess would walk the hills all over Greendale. Then Sarah got a job in Pencaster. "What about Bess?" "She'll have to come with me in my van," said Pat. But oh dear, Bess was hopeless in Pat's van. She wouldn't stay in her basket. She chewed on the corner of a parcel one day. Another time, she jumped out and chased hens. She ran off looking for sheep to round up, and it took Pat an hour to find her. "Major Forbes is on the lookout for another sheepdog," said Miss Hubbard, "and he's a dab at training dogs. He'll soon have her into shape. Why don't you have a word with him?" "I will," said Pat. Major Forbes was delighted. "She's just the dog for me," he said. "Bring her round on Monday and we'll make a start with her." So it was settled, but Pat and Sarah and Julian were sad. They would miss Bess far more than they had missed the hamster or the mice. Monday came. Julian looked tearful as he said goodbye to Bess. "Don't take on," said Pat. "You'll be able to go round to Major's to see her any time you like." "I know," said Julian, but he still looked very sad. It was time to take Bess to Major Forbes. Pat drove along with Bess by his side. Just as they were passing Alf Thompson's bottom meadow, Bess began to make a fuss. "Oh, you don't want to get out, do you?" said Pat. "Just when we're late." But Bess did want to get out. She barked and whined until Pat stopped the van. "Be quick then," said Pat. Bess jumped out, but she still whined at Pat. "What is it now?" said Pat in a cross voice. She wanted him to get out and look. Pat came. Bess led him to a cardboard box, stuck in the hedge. She sniffed and whined and wagged her tail. She nosed at the box. "What is it, Bess?" said Pat. Pat lifted the lid of the box. "Well, I'd be blessed," said Pat. "How did you know that it was in there?" curled up in the bottom of the box was a little black and white kitten. Pat picked it up gently, and it opened its eyes and meowed at him. "Poor little thing," said Pat. "Who can have left you there?" Bess gave it a kiss with her long wet tongue and made it sneeze. "Good girl," said Pat. And this is how Pat arrived home that day, without Bess, but with a kitten tucked up in his warm coat. "Let's call it Jess," said Julian. And they did. They all loved Jess. He didn't run away, or chase hens, or chew holes in the floor, or make people scream in the bus. He had ridden in the van every day with Pat, from that day to this. Pat says he's grand company, is our Jess. As for Bess, she became a very good sheepdog. She loves nothing better than a good day out working the sheep on the fells. And the shepherd often brings her to see Pat and Sarah and Julian and her old friend Jess. The end. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you again here at the ABC Storytime.